The 9th of April, 1940. Under the codename Operation Weserübung, Nazi Germany invades Denmark and Norway. Strategically, Denmark's importance to Germany is a staging area for operations in Norway. In Norway, Germany seeks to secure naval bases for use against the British fleet in the North Sea and to guarantee vital iron ore shipments from neutral Sweden, on which Nazi Germany is dependent. While invasion of Denmark lasts less than 6 hours and is the shortest military campaign conducted by the Germans during the war, Norway surrenders to Germany only after 2 months on the 10th of June, 1940. On the 1st of February 1942, the Germans appoint a minister-president whose pro-Nazi collaborationist puppet government will participate in Germany's war efforts and sent Jews out of the country to concentration camps in German-occupied Poland. His name, which will become a byword for collaborator or traitor, is Vidkun Quisling. Vidkun Abraham Laurits Jonsen Quisling was born on the 18th of July, 1887, in Fyresdal in southern Norway. His father, Jon Laurits Quisling, was a Lutheran minister and genealogist, and Vidkun's mother, Anna Carolina Bang, came from a wealthy family in Grimstad in Norway. In 1905, the then 18-year-old Vidkun Quisling entered the War College. Of the 250 cadets, he had achieved the highest score on the notoriously difficult entrance exams. From the War College, Quisling entered the military academy to pursue a career in the army. Vidkun Quisling graduated with the best grades in the history of the academy since its founding in 1817, and the King of Norway rewarded him by inviting the young Vidkun to an audience with him. In 1911, Quisling joined the general staff of the Norwegian army. 3 years later, on the 28th of July 1914, the First World War began. During the war, Norway was neutral. Quisling detested the peace movement, though the high human cost of war did temper his views. In March 1918, he was sent to Russia as an attaché at the Norwegian legation in Petrograd. Though dismayed at the living conditions he experienced, Quisling nonetheless concluded that the Bolsheviks have got an extraordinarily strong hold on Russian society, and marveled how Leon Trotsky had managed to mobilize the Red Army forces so well. He asserted that, by contrast, in granting too many rights to the people of Russia, the Russian provincial government under Alexander Kerensky had brought about its own downfall. When the legation was recalled in December 1918, Quisling became the Norwegian military's expert on Russian affairs. In September 1919, Quisling departed Norway to become an intelligence officer with a Norwegian delegation in Helsinki in Finland, a post that combined diplomacy and politics, and in January 1922, he arrived in the Ukrainian capital Kharkiv to help with the League of Nations humanitarian relief effort there. In August of the same year, he married the Russian Alexandra Andreevna Voronina. It appeared that there was no romantic involvement between the two, and it is believed that Quisling merely seemed to have wanted to lift the girl out of poverty by providing her with a Norwegian passport and financial security. Soon, he met Maria Vasilyevna Pasechnikova, a Ukrainian more than 10 years his junior. The couple behaved as though they were married, claimed Alexandra was their daughter, and celebrated their wedding anniversary. His time in Russia, however, had the greatest impact on Quisling's political thought. Quisling called his political philosophy universalism. The goal was to develop a collective consciousness for global unity by passing a consciousness from the individual level to the national level. Eventually, universalism took on a racial element as Quisling incorporated a belief in Nordic racial superiority. He asserted that the path to world unity would only be achieved under Nordic leadership working against the Jews. Quisling permanently returned to Norway in 1929. He served as the Norwegian Minister of Defense between 1931 and 1933, as a member of the Agrarian Party. When the Agrarian Party refused to appoint Quisling as party leader, he left to form his own party. In May 1933, he co-founded the Nasjonal Samling, meaning the National Unity political party. Quisling also became the party's Führer, or leader. The party's platform was based on 4 principles: a corporatist vision of society, an emphasis on nationalism and Christianity, paternalism of the state, and economic self-sufficiency. However, the Nasjonal Samling was not successful in elections. In the 1933 Norwegian parliamentary elections, the party took 2.2% of the vote. In 1936, the last elections held before the outbreak of World War II, it took only 1.8% of the vote. Neither result was enough for the party to ever hold a seat in the Storting, the unicameral Norwegian parliament. In addition, dwindling party membership created many problems for Quisling, especially financial ones. For years he had been in financial difficulties and reliant on his inheritance, while increasing numbers of his paintings, which he had acquired cheaply in post-revolutionary Russia, were found to be copies when he tried to sell them. His collection stretched to some 200 paintings, including works claimed to be by Rembrandt, Goya, Cézanne, and numerous other masters. However, sometimes even originals did not raise as much as Quisling had hoped. Vidkun and his brother Arne sold one Frans Hals painting for just $4,000, believing it to be a copy and not the $50,000 artwork they had once thought it to be, only to see it reclassified as an original and revalued at $100,000. In 1939, Quisling turned his attention towards Norway's preparations for the anticipated European war, which he believed involved a drastic increase in the country's defensive spending to guarantee its neutrality. Meanwhile, Quisling presented lectures entitled "The Jewish Problem in Norway" and supported Adolf Hitler in what appeared to be a growing future conflict. Despite condemning Kristallnacht, which was a series of coordinated violent riots against the Jews throughout Nazi Germany and recently incorporated territories, which occurred on the 9th and 10th of November 1938, he sent the German leader a 50th birthday greeting, thanking him for saving Europe from Bolshevism and Jewish domination. Quisling also contended that should an Anglo-Russian alliance make neutrality impossible, Norway would have to go with Germany. Invited to the country in the summer of 1939, he began a tour of a number of German and Danish cities. He was received particularly well in Germany, which promised funds to boost Nasjonal Samling's standing in Norway and hence spread pro-Nazi sentiment. At the start of World War II, in 1939, Norway, like all of Scandinavia, gained new strategic importance for Germany. Erich Raeder, head of the German Navy from 1939 to 1943, was concerned about maintaining German naval access to the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean via naval bases on the Norwegian shoreline. In December 1939, first Raeder, then Hitler, met with Quisling. The Führer was generally impressed. Quisling suggested the British were planning to move into Norway for their own strategic needs. Alarmed, Germany began planning Operation Weserobung, the invasion of Denmark and Norway. The German invasion of Norway under General Nikolaus von Falkenhorst began on the 9th of April, 1940. The same day, while the German offensive got underway, Quisling attempted to seize power in the world's first radio broadcast coup d'etat. He announced to the Norwegian public that they should welcome rather than resist the advancing Germans. He also announced a new government and declared himself the new head of state. 2 hours later, Quisling repeated his radio announcement. This time, he issued a warning that any refusal to cooperate with the new government would henceforth involve the most serious consequences for the individuals concerned. Quisling now reached the high water mark of his political power. On Hitler's orders, Kurt Brauer, Germany's representative in Norway at the time of the invasion, demanded that King Haakon appoint Quisling head of a new government, thereby securing a peaceful transition of power and giving legal sanction to the occupation. However, Haakon rejected this demand. He went further in a meeting with his cabinet, telling the ministers that he could not appoint Quisling prime minister because neither the people nor the Parliament of Norway had confidence in him. He let it be known that he would sooner abdicate than appoint any government headed by Quisling. Hearing this, the government unanimously voted to support the king's stance. It formally advised him not to appoint any government headed by Quisling and urged the people to continue their resistance. With his popular support gone, Quisling ceased to be of use to Hitler. Germany retracted its support for his rival government, preferring instead to build up its own independent governing commission. On the 15th of April, 1940, Nazi leadership forced him to step down. Thus, Quisling's coup only lasted 6 days, and his domestic and international reputation both hit new lows, casting him as both a traitor and a failure. Norway fell to Germany on the 19th of June 1940, and the King and Prime Minister Johan Negertsvold went into exile in London. On the 24th of April 1940, Hitler appointed Josef Terboven, Reich Commissar of the occupied Norwegian territories. General von Falkenhorst, who had planned and commanded the German invasion of Denmark and Norway in 1940, retained military control. In addition, all political parties other than Quisling's Nasjonal Samling were outlawed. As the leader of Nasjonal Samling, Quisling was given a position as head of the cabinet under Terboven. In early 1942, Terboven appointed him minister-president of a national government that was essentially a puppet state under German control. In the course of the summer of 1942, Quisling lost any ability he might have had to sway public opinion by attempting to force children into Nasjonal Samling's Ungdomsfylking youth organization, which was modeled on the Hitler Youth. This move prompted a mass resignation of teachers from their professional body and churchmen from their posts, along with large-scale civil unrest. His attempted indictment of Bishop Eivind Berggrav proved similarly controversial, even amongst his German allies. Quisling now toughened his stance, telling Norwegians that they would have the new regime forced upon them whether they liked it or not. On the 1st of May, 1942, the German High Command noted that the organized resistance to Quisling had started, and Norway's peace talks with Germany stalled as a result. On the 11th of August 1942, Hitler postponed any further peace negotiations until the war ended. As an added insult, for the first time, he was forbidden to write letters directly to Hitler. Quisling believed that the only way he could win back Hitler's respect would be to raise volunteers for the now faltering German war effort. After the German defeat at Stalingrad in February 1943, he committed Norway wholeheartedly to German plans to wage total war. About 15,000 Norwegians volunteered for combat duty on the Nazi side, and of the 6,000 sent into action as part of the Germanic SS, most were sent to the Eastern Front. Germanic SS was the collective name given to the paramilitary and political organizations established in parts of German-occupied Europe between 1939 and 1945, under the auspices of the German SS. One of Quisling's first acts in his role as minister-president was to reinstate the so-called Jewish paragraph of the Norwegian constitution. This paragraph, which had been removed in 1851, prevented Jews from immigrating to Norway. From October through November 1942, Quisling signed a series of laws that enabled the arrest of all Norwegian Jewish men, the confiscation of all Jewish-owned property and assets, and the registration of all Norwegian Jews. There were approximately 2,100 Jews in Norway at the time of German invasion. Among them were about 350 German and Austrian refugees who had sought haven from Nazi Germany. A month after the mass arrest of Jewish men, Nazi officials working with Quisling's Nasjonal Samling began to arrest women and children. Acting on plans that had been previously developed, the Norwegian police arrested Jews throughout Norway and brought them to Oslo for deportation to Germany. The first deportation of 532 Jews left Oslo on the 26th of November 1942. Another 158 were deported on the 25th of February 1943, followed by transfers of smaller groups. In all, 772 Norwegian Jews were deported from the Norwegian capital to Germany. From Oslo, Norwegian Jews were sent by ship to the German port city of Stettin, today's Szczecin in Poland. They were then transferred by train to Auschwitz, where most were gassed immediately upon arrival. However, 34 Norwegian Jews, all men, ultimately did survive to see the end of the war. Fortunately, however, many Jews received advance warnings of the roundups from Norwegian policemen and members of the underground. As a result, many of Norway's Jews, about 1,000, escaped to neutral Sweden with the aid of the underground, and many others went into hiding. Following the deportation of the Jews, Germany deported Norwegian officers and finally attempted to deport students from the University of Oslo. Even Hitler was incensed by the scale of the arrests. Quisling became entangled in a similar debacle in early 1944 when he forced compulsory military service on elements of the Hirden, causing a number of members to resign to avoid being drafted. The Hirden was a uniformed paramilitary organization during the occupation of Norway by Nazi Germany, modeled the same way as the German SS. On the 20th of January 1945, Quisling made what would be his final trip to visit Hitler. He promised Norwegian support in the final phase of the war if Germany agreed to a peace deal that would remove Norway's affairs from German intervention. This proposal grew out of a fear that as German forces retreated southwards through Norway, the occupation government would have to struggle to keep control in northern Norway. To the horror of the Quisling regime, the Nazis instead decided on a scorched earth policy in northern Norway, going so far as to shoot Norwegian civilians who refused to evacuate the region. The period was also marked by increasing civilian casualties from Allied air raids and a mounting resistance to the government within occupied Norway. The meeting with the German leader proved unsuccessful, and upon being asked to sign the execution order of thousands of Norwegian saboteurs, Quisling refused, an act of defiance that so enraged Bourbon acting on Hitler's orders that he stormed out of the negotiations. On recounting the events of the trip to a friend, Quisling broke down in tears, convinced the Nazi refusal to sign a peace agreement would seal his reputation as a traitor. Adolf Hitler committed suicide on the 30th of April, 1945. Privately, Quisling had long accepted that National Socialism would be defeated, and on the 7th of May, he ordered police not to offer armed resistance to the Allied advance, except in self-defense or against overt members of the Norwegian resistance movement. The same day, Germany announced it would surrender unconditionally, making Quisling's position untenable. A realist, Quisling met military leaders of the resistance on the following day to discuss how he would be arrested. Quisling declared that whilst he did not want to be treated as a common criminal, he did not want preferential treatment compared to his Nasjonal Samling colleagues. He argued he could have kept his forces fighting until the end, but had chosen to ensure a peaceful transition to avoid turning Norway into a battlefield. On the 9th of May, 1945, Quisling and his ministers turned themselves into the police. Quisling was transferred to Cell 12 in Møllergata 19, the main police station in Oslo. The cell was equipped with a tiny table, a basin, and a hole in the wall for a toilet bucket. After 10 weeks being constantly watched to prevent suicide attempts in police custody, he was transferred to Akershus Fortress and awaited trial as part of the legal purge. The trial opened on the 20th of August, 1945. Quisling was charged with murder, embezzlement, theft, and other crimes. The most worrying of all for Quisling was the charge of conspiring with Hitler over the invasion and occupation of Norway. In court, Quisling argued that he had acted in Norway's best interest and always with the goal of restoring Norwegian independence. He misrepresented the truth on several occasions, and the truthful majority of his statements won him few advocates in the country at large, where he remained almost universally despised. In the later days of the trial, Quisling's health suffered, largely as a result of the number of medical tests to which he was subjected, and his defense faltered. The prosecution's final speech placed responsibility for the final solution being carried out in Norway at the feet of Quisling, using the testimony of German officials. On the 10th of September 1945, when the verdict was announced, Quisling was convicted of all but a handful of minor charges and sentenced to death. After giving testimony in a number of other trials of Nasjonal Samling members, Quisling was executed by firing squad at Akershus Fortress on the 24th of October 1945 at 2:40 a.m. His last words before being shot were, "I am convicted unfairly, and I die innocent." After his death, his body was cremated, leaving the ashes to be interred in Fyresdal, where he was born. Quisling's residence, Villa Grande, which he called Gimle, a name taken from Norse mythology, today houses the Norwegian Center for Holocaust and Minority Studies, which is a research, education, and documentation center in Oslo focusing on the Holocaust, other genocides, extremism, anti-Semitism, hate speech, and the situation of minorities in contemporary societies. On the 8th of May 1945, one day before he turned himself into police, Quisling said, "I know that the Norwegian people have sentenced me to death, and that the easiest course for me would be to take my own life. But I want to let history reach its own verdict. Believe me, in 10 years' time, I will have become another Saint Olav." However, he was wrong. While the saga of Saint Olav became central to a national identity and is a symbol of Norwegian independence and pride, Vidkun Quisling has become one of history's most infamous traitors, owing to his collaboration with Nazi Germany. Outside of Norway, the word Quisling has outlasted the memory of Vidkun Quisling himself, and became synonymous with traitor, a use that began during the war. The word Quisling continues to be applied to political figures who collaborate with outside powers, especially invading forces. However, it is also used as a general term for a traitor. Thus, his betrayal of Norway to Germany has made his name into a label for all collaborators and traitors. There were no tears shed for Vidkun Quisling.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe.
and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.